everybody, my name is Shibi. I'm an esports colorcaster and celestial ranked player in Marvel Rivals, and in today's video, I'm going to talk about the overwhelming amount of CC in this game and why it's one of the most frustrating issues for players to deal with at the moment. Whether you're a Vanguard, duelist, or strategist, it's safe to say you've had moments in this game where it feels like the crowd control just never ends, and you would be completely right in that feeling. I did a deep dive on the actual amount of CC in Marvel Rivals to give everyone a better picture on what they're actually experiencing. I don't want to keep you waiting any longer, so let's just get into it. Before we get into the data of how much CC there actually is in Marvel Rivals, I think it's important to hammer out the definition of crowd control and the difference between hard CC and soft CC and how it's applied in this video. So based off the research I did online, as well as my own experiences gaming and commentating multiple titles, the definition of hard CC that we're going to use is going to be any stuns, knockups, knockbacks, silences, and the last thing, very crucial here, is forced actions, essentially abilities that force a character to move to a location. Everybody knows what a stun is, a knockup, a silence, but examples of forced actions are going to be something like the magic team up with Doctor Strange, where it forces two characters to converge onto a point, or Emma ultimate, when you are psionically seduced, it forces you closer to her. Even in this case, Magneto right click is a form of hard CC that is a forced action because it forces you back and it pushes you back. The other side of this is going to be the soft CC definition, and this is a lot easier to understand for most people because it's very common across multiple different titles regardless of the game you play, right? Things like slows and blinds are considered soft CC, and in Marvel Rivals case and for this video, I included grounding effects. So things like Thing and Thor, who have grounding effects on some of their abilities, I included it as a soft CC. Other examples of soft CCs in this game is going to be Cloak's Terror Cape because it blinds you, Black Widow's ultimate because it slows you, and obviously Invisible Woman's Slow Orb, which you can guess it is a soft CC. Now that we have the definition of crowd control out of the way, I do want to talk about the process in which I gathered the data that I'll be talking about in this video. Essentially what I did was I went into the practice range and I had a couple Groots moving left to right while I went on every single character and tested every single ability on them to look for any forms of CC, stuns, knockups, slows, you name it. On top of this, I include all the team ups and put that in my data, as well as going both onto the official Marvel Rivals hero pages and the Marvel Rivals wiki to read out their abilities and make sure I didn't personally miss any form of CC that I didn't get in my testing. Now to move on to the fun facts or the overview of the data that I have. Out of the 43 heroes in Marvel Rivals, there are 58 forms of hard crowd control and 25 forms of soft crowd control. This totals to about 83 forms of total CC in the game. Between the 23 duelists, there are 29 forms of hard CC between them and 15 forms of soft CC. Out of the 11 Vanguards in the game, they have 23 forms of hard CC and 6 forms of soft CC. And for my strategist players, the 9 strategists in Marvel Rivals at the moment have 6 forms of hard CC and 4 forms of a soft CC. The fun fact on the soft CC end is that Invisible Woman owns 3 of the 4 soft crowd controls, with it being her orb, her shield, and her ultimate all providing slows, and Cloak and Dagger has the 4th soft CC with their Terror Cape putting on a blind. Out of the duelists, there are only 4 duelists in the game without any form of CC in their kits. That includes Star-Lord, Iron Man, Black Panther, and Psylocke. And out of all the duelists in the game, there are 5 duelists without any hard CC in their kit. The previous 4 that I mentioned, and Punisher has no hard crowd control. His form of soft crowd control is the Punisher Daredevil blind team up that he has. Another fact, Winter Soldier and Thing are tied for the most forms of CC in the game at 5 apiece. Winter Soldier has 3 forms of hard CC, that being his pull, his punch, and his Tainted Voltage knockdown on flyers. I also included his Tainted Voltage slow on grounded enemies or, enemies that don't fly. And one that I think a lot of people don't see or don't even count is the Captain America team up. If you get hit by that, it slows and does damage to you. So he has 3 forms of hard and 2 forms of soft CC. On the flip side, Thing has 4 forms of hard CC. Obviously his Yancey Street charge, his aerial knockdown when he hits you in the air with a punch, his torch team up, and obviously his ultimate. I also included the grounded effect on his Yancey Street charge as a soft CC, which is what we talked about earlier in the video. You can obviously think Thor is going to be included in that because his bubble slows and has a soft CC effect. Now, based off the data that I've given you, I think you can kind of notice an alarming thing. The 23 duelists in the game have the most CC combined, right? They have the most overall CC, and the ratio for Vanguards out of the 11 is higher on the hard CC end. Now that makes sense for Vanguards. I'm not gonna dog on the Vanguard players and the Vanguards in this game for having a higher ratio of hard CC to the amount of characters in the game available to their class, because if you think of a Vanguard, you think of a big, tank hero that is supposed to use their crowd control and use their big body to take space in the game and provide something for their team. The alarming thing is, why do the duelists, essentially 18 duelists out of the 23, why do they have 29 forms of hard CC amongst them? Granted, there are some outliers like Winter Soldier, who has 3 to his name. Spider-Man as well has 3, but his is a lot more skillful, and we'll kind of talk about skillful CC versus unfair later in this video. But I just think it's really interesting that Marvel Rivals, from a hero design philosophy point, have really kind of overloaded a lot of the duelists with the amount of both hard and soft crowd control in their kits. It feels like they can't really make a hero without having one or the other, and that might be a problem that is too late to solve, right? Because there are so many heroes and some of their abilities are tied to the amount of CC they have, and some of their strength is put into that kit with their CC, it feels a little bit more difficult to make heroes that don't have it. Granted, the ones that I talked about, Star-Lord, Iron Man, Black Panther, Psylocke, and Punisher, 3 out of those 5 heroes are meta or actually really good, right? Psylocke is like a top 5 DPS, Star-Lord as well is coming back into the meta, and Punisher, since the buffs that he received a while ago to his gun and his changes, he's actually been a solid pick. So it's not that these heroes are intrinsically bad without crowd control, but it feels like if they're not at the Star-Lord, Psylocke, Punisher level, where they just have an overwhelming amount of damage, which is the trade-off that a lot of, design choices people will make, is that if they don't have CC, they have to bring something else to the table, which is going to be a lot of damage for duelists because that's their primary role. It kind of feels like if they're not at that level, if they don't make a hero that's at that level and he just comes out with no CC or maybe only one piece of CC that's kind of useless, I'm talking about Blade, the hero is kind of bad, right? There are good DPS designs. I think a really interesting one, and a hero that's not really good, is Black Widow. I think she's a good example of a character archetype that was flipped on its head with the inclusion of the crowd control in her kit, right? She's a prototypical sniper hero, but also you have to respect her close range capabilities with the kick plus pull headshot combo and the utility and damage that her ultimate, provides with the slow on top of, just the annoyance it is, because she can kind of charge it up relatively quickly as long as she's a good Black Widow player. Another interesting concept for CC is somebody like Spider-Man, who doesn't feel unfair, right? I've never really complained about a Spider-Man in the sense of going against it and saying, oh man, this guy's crowd control feels really unfair. He has the uppercut, he has the web pull, and he has the ultimate. Maybe the ultimate is the only unskilled part of his kit, but the uppercut and the web pull really rely on him getting in and getting out. And sometimes those web pulls, the cross map ones, not every Spider-Man is going to be doing that. I think another one where the CC is more subtle in their kit, but it actually is a difference maker and it's important without people really complaining about it, is Moon Knight. I think his Ankh specifically, it has that slight knock-up effect or kind of like knockback effect. And it is really important because if you don't land it, you do miss out on your damage. And I don't think people are complaining about the knock-up effect of the Ankh. I think people are just complaining that the Ankh ricochets so much damage to people, and maybe that they could nerf the damage aspect of it. I don't ever hear anybody complaining about Moon Knight's Ankh in the sense of its CC. I also think some well-designed heroes that only have like one form of CC or in the one form of hard and soft, somebody like Wanda or Scarlet Witch, her orb is a stun and it has a really weird delay timing, so it's not instant. And her ultimate has a sort of soft CC pull-in effect. I think that's a very well-designed hero that's not super OP, that still includes 1-in-1 factor. You also have Human Torch, who technically only has one form of hard crowd control, and he was hard meta for a while. They had to actually nerf his damage more than anything because of just how good he was. I think that's a very solid use of CC, especially giving a character like Human Torch, who's a flyer, a form of hard CC, the slam down, and making it, very risky, right? You have to really pick and choose. Am I going to slam down here? And if I don't get a kill, or if I don't get an escort out, do I die here? I think there are good design choices that Marvel Rivals makes when it comes to CC, but the fact of the matter is, when 18 out of your 23 duelists all have some form of hard CC in the game, that's where the moniker of CC Rivals comes to play. And I think it's that much more prevalent when you're playing as a tank, because obviously you as a tank player, and especially in a tank duo, are playing against two other tanks that most likely have some form of hard crowd control in their kit. So on top of getting hit by that crowd control, you are now getting pelted with duelists that have one or the other, some sort of stun, some sort of knock up or knockback, and you're not really allowed to play the game the way you want to. As a tank player, as a Vanguard player, you should command space and command respect. But if you're too busy getting CC'd by the Emma Frost, who, by the way, is very badly designed in that aspect of her having a command grab, a choke, a kick into the wall. If you're getting grabbed and you're getting damaged the whole time, and as you get up from that grab, Bucky then pulls you, right? And then you get, you can see where the frustration starts to boil over for a lot of these players. And I don't think this problem can be, kind of solved by just removing hard CC from duelists entirely. I think realistically, you need to nerf maybe some of the aspects, but I think if you were to start following a hard rule of okay, duelists can only have one form of hard CC or one form of soft CC, then that would ultimately limit the creativity of the hero design on NetEase's side, and us as players would get really bored kind of playing a cookie cutter version of another hero because they're just not that different, right? Black Widow, Spider-Man, Moon Knight, these are all good examples that I mentioned earlier of heroes that have CC that you wouldn't really think would have it necessarily. I think a problem that can be tackled is tying hero identities around crowd control abilities. The hero that encapsulate this to the fullest is going to be Wolverine. Outside of his kidnap, he's just not a well-designed or good hero, right? Marvel Rivals hasn't really solved the Wolverine problem either. They just continuously nerfed his damage numbers and his cooldowns until he started being pushed out for other heroes. He's still equally frustrating to play against as he was in Season 2, as he is in Season 4.5, because his base kit is so intrinsically tied to his kidnap. And I think Angela might kind of face the same problem here with her being a heavy displacement tank and very similar to Wolverine. And I'm not entirely sure how Marvel Rivals essentially declaws Wolverine's CC ability without completely reworking him. I don't think it's wrong to have a tank buster style hero. I think Iron Fist is a decent example of how you can implement that with some counterplay, but Wolverine is frustrating and he isn't solved, right? Marvel Rivals is just going to be content on nerfing him until I think they find a solution. Another problem, and it's something I mentioned earlier, is, CC in the game that doesn't feel fair. Prime example, I mentioned Emma, right? Her choke plus kick combo specifically. The fact that you can get fully DPS downed while you are getting command grabbed and kicked is a major frustration point, not just for Vanguards, but for essentially anybody that walks within her grab range. And it is pretty big, right? She can dash forward and the command grab range is pretty forgiving. On top of this, it can also grab through shields, and you can, for whatever reason, grab Thing, who's technically supposed to be the unCCable tank. Yeah, I think design like this, when it comes to specific heroes where their CC feels really, really frustrating, yeah, I think we need to tone that down a little bit. We need to think about how this can affect the overall ecosystem of Marvel Rivals when it comes to the heroes. I also think Marvel Rivals has a big problem with giving characters unnecessary CC. Biggest examples I can think of are Hela and Phoenix. Why does Hela have a stun orb when she's one of the best hit scan heroes in the game? Her damage fall off is ridiculous, right? And on top of this, they added a team up that gives her more CC. Granted, it is soft CC and it's still tied to her orb, but why does it now slow you so you can land more headshots when in reality, Hela's at Grandmaster and above are going to be aiming very, very well. And the stun orb makes it absolutely impossible. Maybe not impossible, but really difficult to dive her. Phoenix as well, another good example, her right click. It stuns on the first 2 hits and then slows afterwards. I don't see how that's necessary, especially tying to her identity of being a brawl-focused kind of duelist. And she has the stacking mechanic, and this also stacks people. If it didn't have the stacking mechanic, maybe it'll be a little bit more balanced. But the fact that it's like a point and click stun essentially on the ground, it can stun people out of their ultimates like Doctor Strange thing. Like it doesn't make sense for me when Marvel Rivals says, hey, we're going to take these hit scan heroes and we're going to give them a form of hard CC to make them that much more impossible to kill. Another thing that Rivals fails to take into account is that players can regularly layer CC onto enemies, which can make the receiving end feel absolutely helpless. Tell me you haven't been in this situation where you get Emma grabbed and then Bucky pulled and then Luna snowballed, or you get slept or something out. Like you get hit with 3 or 4 different CCs back to back to back. Now, I'm not advocating for removing CC layering by any means. I think it is actually somewhat skillful to chain CC and layer CC regardless of the game, whether it's Marvel Rivals or MOBA like League of Legends. But when nearly every hero in the game has some form of hard crowd control, it becomes less difficult for your team to land 3 out of the 6 hard crowd control tools that's available to them to absolutely destroy somebody. This is where I think the CC Rivals moniker can really begin to show. This is especially felt on Vanguard players, like I mentioned, as they are the ones most regularly tanking CC in order to create space and make movements for their team. If you're the Doctor Strange player, if you're the Magneto player, whatever, there have been countless times where you have just been hit with 5 to 6 abilities back to back to back to back. You're getting put in the blender, and your only hope is that your supports are looking at you and healing you through everything. This is even more accentuated when you're playing a melee tank, something like Hulk or Thor, which, okay, I agree, CC should be their weakness because they're getting into melee range. Because they're really getting up in your face, you should have some sort of get off me tool or some sort of form or way to push them back. But when they are diving onto heroes that naturally should be more susceptible to them, things like Hela, things like Phoenix, they have getaway tools and CC. That 1v1 dynamic where this big brawly tank that's melee focused should be able to take you down because he caught you misplaying, that actually turns into a death for him because the amount of CC in the game and the amount of damage that a lot of these duelists have front loaded in their kits. So I think it's a very impossible task to ask Marvel Rivals to completely remove all the CC in the game and the crowd control, but I just wanted to kind of dive into the data and really talk about how much there actually is and bring validity to the people's claims that it is a CC-filled nightmare at times. Now, I'm going to link the Imgur link of my spreadsheet that I have here, and it's going to go over every single hero. It has all the hard CC abilities, all the data I have, the counts, everything like that. It'll be separated by duelist, Vanguard, and strategist, so you guys can look at it on your own time. You can share it on social media. Just credit me if you do, if you use my content, if you use this link, I'd love to be credited. But yeah, I just wanted to do kind of an overview of the amount of crowd control in Marvel Rivals and do a real data heavy deep dive because this is just kind of my profession outside of Marvel Rivals. So I think it was really cool to kind of combine that and make it something palpable for you guys. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications, as that all helps me out a ton. I try and respond to every single one of the comments in my videos because I generally do appreciate you guys taking time out of your busy schedules to leave one, as well as I love interacting with my own community. If you want to see more of my content, I stream over on Twitch about 3 to 4 times a week, starting around 7 p.m. PST. Over there, you'll get unedited versions of my videos, as well as we go over gameplay reviews, patch notes, and you guys can ask questions in the chat, and I respond pretty quickly. If you care more for short form content, I upload daily on both YouTube Shorts and TikTok. Over there, you'll get condensed versions of my videos, as well as stream highlights and my general thoughts on the game. All of that will be in the description box below, as well as a pop-up that will show up on the right side of the screen here telling you where to go and all my handles. I really do appreciate all of you, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.